Hello, all. This is Jay Coder back with another stream. Today, we're going to be diving deeper into making the user interface look better using some material design and using some icons and things like that to enhance the user experience. If you never been here before, please subscribe. And my goal is to help you to become a pro Android developer. Well, I'm not gonna waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get started with the lesson here. And so I'm gonna go ahead and mute the actual music right now. And also, I'm going to post the code lab that we're going over in the chat so that people can follow along. These code labs are from the official Android developer dev site, so it's straight from the source. So I believe this material is good for learning. And all right, so now we're going over create a more polished user experience. So actually, let me go ahead and, sorry guys, I gotta change the display to, okay. Alright, awesome. Alright, create a more polished user experience. About this code lab, as you've learned in earlier code labs, Material is a design system created by Google with guidelines, components, and tools that support the best practices of user interface design. In this code lab, you will update the tip calculator from the previous code labs. So for the last couple of days, we've been working on the tip calculator, and we have it finished here with the layout and the Kotlin code. If you have not finished the tip calculator, I encourage you to go back and look at the previous videos on my channel, and it goes over the tip time calculator and the full code and everything. And also, you can go to this link for go to this section outline to follow the complete building of the actual tip time calculator. And I'm gonna also go ahead and post this in the chat so that you guys can be able to reference that if you want. So link to outline of building required tip time app. Okay, so all right, and so let us go on. And by the way, I have my tip time app inside the Android Studio right now, and so to have a more polished user experience, as seen in the final screenshot below, you'll also test the app in some additional scenarios to ensure the user experience is as smooth as possible. Prerequisites: familiar with common UI widgets such as text view, image view, button, edit text, radio button, radio group, and switch. Familiar with constraint layout and positioning child views by setting constraints, comfortable with modified XML layouts, aware of the difference between bitmap images and vector drawables, can set theme attributes in a theme, able to turn on dark theme on a device have previously modified the app's build.gradle file for project dependencies, well, you'll learn how to use material design components in your app, how to use material icons in your app by importing them from Image Assets Studio, how to create and apply new styles, how to set other theme attributes aside from color, a polished tip calculator app that follows recommended UI best practices, a computer with the latest stable version of Android Studio installed, code for the tip type app from the completed previous collabs from those pathways. Starter app overview. Through our prior collabs, you built up the Tip Time app, which is a tip calculator app with options to customize the tip. Your app UI currently looks like the below screenshot. The functionality works, but it looks more like a prototype. The fields aren't quite lined up visually. There's definitely room for improvement in terms of more consistent styling, and spacing, as well as the use of modern material design components. So, okay. So material components are common UI widgets that makes it easier to implement material styling in your app. The documentation provides information for how to use and customize the material design components. There are general material design guidelines for each component, and Android platform specific guidance for the components that are available on Android. The labeled diagrams give you enough information to recreate a component if it happens to not exist on your chosen platform. So, alright. So, by using material components, your app will operate in a more consistent way alongside other apps on the user's device. That the UI patterns that way the UI patterns learned in one app can be carried over to the next one. Hence, users will be able to learn how to use your app much faster. It's recommended to use material components whenever possible, as opposed to the non material widgets. They are also more flexible and customizable, as you will learn in this next task. The Material Design Components MDC library needs to be included as a dependency in your project. This line should already be present in your project by default. In your app's build.gradle file, make sure this dependency is included with the latest version of the library. For more details, see the Get Started page on the Material Design site. So, I'm going to go ahead and share the Get Started page on the material components for Android so that everyone can be able to reference that. This is more on getting started with material design. Alright. And then it says, so they want us to check that we have the material dependencies in the build.gradle, which it should already be there, they said, by default. So we go to our Android Studio, and then we go to, we go to the bottom here. We go to our build.gradle, and then inside our build.gradle, we look for the dependencies, implementation, com.google.android material, and at this point it's at 1.5.0. So this is the line that they're looking for, which we need in order to program with material design. So text fields in your tip calculator app, at the top of the layout, you currently have an edit text field for the cost of service. This edit text field works, but it doesn't follow the recent material design guidelines on how text fields should look and behave. Let me go ahead and play the application here. So I'm going to go to the Android Studio, then I'm going to go to play, and then we're playing the app from the emulator. And let's see what this looks like here. So currently this is what our edit text looks like in these modern times. The tutorial might be a little different because it might be well, I don't want to say outdated, but different because things uh, change very rapidly in Android development and development in general. But anyway, it says in your tip calculator app at the top layout, you currently have the edit text. This edit text field works, but it doesn't follow the material design guidelines on how text fields should look and behave. For any new component that you want to use, start by learning about it on the material site. From the guide on text fields, there are two types of text fields. Filled text field, which they have this color, and outline text field, where it's outlined. To create a text field as shown above, use a text input layout with an enclosed text input edit text from the MDC library. The material text field can be easily customized. Display input text on a label that's always visible. Display an icon in the text field. Display helper or error message. In the first task of this code lab, you'll be replacing the cost of service edit text with a material text field, which is composed of a text input layout and text input edit text. With the Tip Time app open in Android Studio, go to the activity main XML layout file. It should contain a constraint layout with the tip calculator layout. To see an example of what the XML looks like for a material text field, go back to the Android guidance for text fields. You should see snippets like this one. Okay, so they want us to go to see an example of what the XML looks like. Go to the back to the Android guidance. So we go here and text fields. So this is the text input layout, text input edit, text input text. Okay. After seeing this example, insert a material text field as the first child of the constraint layout before the edit text field. You'll get rid of the edit text field in later steps. You can type this into Android Studio and use autocomplete to make it easier, or you can copy the example XML from the documentation page and paste it into your layout like this. Notice how the text input layout has a child view. The text edit text, remember, all that ellipses are used to abbreviate snippets so that you can focus on the lines of XML that have actually changed. So, all right. So, it wants us to go ahead and change this guy to the layout. com.google.android. Text input layout. And then um, actually, let me go ahead and copy this. And so we're going to go ahead and go, let me close this guy. And then basically it wants us to go to our layout file, activity.layout file, and then go to our code. And then it wants us to say instead. So after seeing this example, insert a material text field as the first child of the before the edit text field. You'll get rid of the text field at a later step. So they want us to go ahead and add this text field. Looks like it's like a brand new text field. Okay. All right, so we added that, and now says you are expected to see errors on the text input layout element. You haven't properly constrained this view yet in the parent constraint layout. Also, the string resource isn't recognized. You'll fix these errors in the coming steps. Add vertical and horizontal constraints onto the text field to position it within the parent constraint layout. The parent constraint layout. Since you haven't deleted the edit text yet, cut and paste the following attributes from the edit text and place them into the text input layout. The constraints resource ID cost of service layout with width of 160 dp, layout height of wrap content, and the hint text string cost of service. So add a vertical and a horizontal constraints. So they're going to add these constraints after the hint and then they want, since you haven't deleted the edit text yet, cut and paste the following attributes from the edit text into the text input layout. The text input layout. So it's going to be 160 DP width and cost of service for the hit. So we're going to go ahead and, as the width, it's going to be 160 DP. And then for the hit, it's going to be this. And then you may see an error that the cost of service ID is the same as the resource ID of the edit text, but you can ignore the error for now. Edit text will be removed in a couple steps. Next, make sure the text input edit text element has all the appropriate attributes. Cut and paste over the input type from the edit text onto the text input edit text. Change the text input edit text element resource ID to cost of service edit text. So the ID is going to be changed to this. So and that was the text input edit text. Text input edit text. And then it's going to be number decimal. All right. Width of match parent and height of wrap content is fine as is. When setting a width of match parent, the text input edit text will have the same width as the parent text input layout, which is 160 dp. Now that you have copied all relevant information from the edit text, go ahead and delete the edit text from the layout. Okay. So they have the match parent wrap content. They said we can go ahead and delete this guy. And also, this guy is going to be changed to this. This ID for this one is going to be changed to the previous ID there. So that fixes any constraint errors. In the design view of your layout, you should see this preview. The cost of service field now looks like a material text field. So let us see what the design looks like now. Okay, so that's what the cost of service text field looks like at this moment. Do I have everything? Wrap content. Alright. it says you can't run your app yet because there's an error in your main activity.kt file in the calculate tip method. Recall from an earlier code lab that with view binding enabled for your project, Android creates properties in a binding object based on the resource ID name. The field we retrieved the cost of the service from has changed in the XML layout, so the Kotlin code needs to be updated accordingly. You will now be retrieving the user input from the text input edit text element with resource ID cost of service edit text in the main activity. Use binding dot cost of service edit text to access the text string stored within it. The rest of the calculate tip method can stay the same. So we need to go to the calculate tip method in the main, and then so we go to the string in text field, and here we can get this cost of service edit text instead of the previous one that we had. So, okay, we updated that. And then great work. Now run the app and test that it still works. Notice how the cost of service label now appears above your input as you type. The tip should still calculate as expected. So let us run the app and see what's going on. Alright, our box is different. Cost of service. When we click on our, that was a cool animation. So we do 100, calculate 20. Alright, so that is what they wanted us to add here. Cool. Now switches. In the material design guidelines, there's also guidance on switches. A switch is a widget where you can toggle a setting on or off. Check out the Android guidance for material switches. You will learn about the switch material widget from the MDC library, which provides material styling for switches. If you keep scrolling through the guide, you will see some examples of XML. To use switch material, you must explicitly specify switch material in your layout and use the fully qualified path name in the activity main XML layout. Change the XML tag from switch to com.google.android.material.switch Okay, and gonna go ahead and copy this link and post it in the chat so for as your reference as well. So this is more on switches. Okay. All right. And so what it says is in the main activity.xml layout, change the XML tag from switch to that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and go to the um, the activity main, and then we're going to go to the code, and then we're going to find the switch, and then we're going to change the switch to this com.android.material.switch material.switch material. Then so we're gonna delete that there. So now it says run the app to verify it still complies. There happens to be no visible change in the app. However, an advantage to using switch material from the MDC library instead of switch from the Android platform is that when the library's implementation for switch material gets updated, the material design guidelines change, then you will get the updated widget for free without any changes required on your part. This helps future-proof your app. So let's see if it changed look at all in our app. It does. It does look different. So throughout the time they update the UI widgets, just as long as you're using the same code, your app will transform accordingly. So, you know, they update the widget design, and then, you're using the proper com.google.android, using this proper thing, your app will transform in its looks automatically without you doing anything, which is pretty cool. At this point, you've seen two examples of how your UI can benefit from using out of the box material design components, and now that brings your app closer in line with material guidelines. Remember that you can always explore other material design components provided on Android at this site. So, okay. So here is the official material site where you can be able to use, material components. So I'm going to go ahead and post this in the chat. Or on material for Android. All right. So So icons are symbols. Icons are symbols that can help users understand a user interface by visually communicating the intended function. They often take inspiration from objects in the physical world that a user is expected to have experienced. Icon design often reduces the level of detail to the minimum required to be familiar to a user. For example, a pencil in the physical world is used for writing, so its icon counterpart usually indicates creating, adding, or editing an item. Sometimes icons are linked to obsolete physical world objects, as is the case with the floppy disk icon. The icon is the ubiquitous indication of saving a file or database record. However, while floppy disks were popularized in the 1970s, they ceased to be common after 2000, but its continual use today speaks to how strong visual visual can transcend the lifetime of its physical form. Representing icons in your app. For icons in your app, instead of providing different versions of a bitmap image for different screen densities, the recommended practice is to use vector drawables. Vector drawables are represented as XML files that store the instructions on how to create an image rather than saving the actual pixels that make up the image. Vector drawables can be scaled up or down without any loss of visual quality or increase in file size. Provided icons. Material design provides a number of icons arranged in common categories for most of your needs. See list of icons. So these icons also, okay, we can go here to see the list of icons. And so we can use any of these icons inside our app to definitely make our app look more professional and well designed. And so you don't even need to have a designer to recreate, you know, icons from scratch because this library is so vast that it can probably fit your needs as far as basic icons. And I'm going to go ahead and post this in the chat so that you all can reference. So these are Google font icons. All right. In this task, you'll add 3 vector drawable icons to the app. 1. Icon next to the cost of service text field. 2. Icon next to the service question. 3. Icon next to the round up tip prompt. Below is a screenshot of the final version of the app. After you add the icons, you'll adjust the layout to accommodate the placement of these icons. Notice how the fields and calculate button get shifted over to the right with the addition of the icons. So add vector drawable assets. You can create these icons as a vector drawables directly from Asset Studio and Android Studio. Upon the Resource Manager tab, open the Resource Manager tab located on the left of the application window. Click the plus icon and select Vector Asset. Alright, let us do that. Let us go to our Android Studio. And then we're going to go to our Resource Manager. Then we're going to go to our plus. And then we're going to go to Vector Asset. And then for the asset type, make sure the radio button labeled clip art is selected. So clip art, okay, clip art. And then click the bottom. So click the bottom next to the clip art to select the different clip art image in the prompt that appears. Type call made into the window that appears. You'll be using the Android icon from the round up tip option selected and click OK. So let's see. So in here said so to select a different clip art image in the prompt that appears, type call. Okay. Okay. So it wants us to select this and then type appear call sorry, call made. And so okay. So wants us to choose that and rename the icon IC round up. So we're gonna rename this to IC round up. And then it's recommended to use the prefix IC when renaming your icon files. You can leave the size as 24 by 24 and color as black 0000. Click next and accept the default directory location and then click finish. Repeat steps 2 through 7 for the other icons, two icons. And then so we're gonna hit next and then we're gonna hit finish. So that's gonna be our IC roundup. And then we're gonna go to plus and then vector asset. And then what else does it want? It wants us to service question icon, search for room service. So I'm going to search for room service. Alright, so we have the room service, and then I'm going to go to OK. Alright. And then once I do the room service, it wants us to do the cost of service icon, which is IC serve. Oh, did I name it IC service? This needs to be named IC service, and the other one needs to be named IC store. And let's go back to our Android Studio. And this one needs to be named IC service. And then we go back over here. And this one's going to be IC store. And this is cost of service. And then we're going to do store. So inside our Android Studio, we're going to do plus vector asset. And we're going to search for store. And then the one named store. And then that's going to be IC store. IC what is this doing? Okay. IC store. And then we're going to do next. Finished. Alright, that's great. Now, gonna go back. And then once you're done, the resource manager will like the below. Once you're done, the resource manager will look like the below screenshot. You will also have these three vector drawables: IC roundup, IC service, and IC underscore store listed in your res drawable folder. Okay. So IC roundup, IC service, IC store, and let's see, did it appear in our resources? Inside our drawables. Here we go. Then it wants us support older Android versions. You just added vector drawables to your app, but it's important to note that the support for vector drawables on the Android platform wasn't added until Android 5.0 API level 21. Based on how you set up the project, the minimal SDK version for the TipTime app is API 19. That means the app can run on Android devices that are running Android platform version 19 or higher. To make your app work on these older versions of Android, known as backwards compatibility, add the vector drawables element to your app's build.gradle file. This enables you to use vector drawables on versions of the platform less than API 21 versus converting to PNGs when the project is built. See more details here. So it wants us to go to vector drawables backwards compatibility solution. So we want to make sure that when we're adding these, that the backward compatibility can be complied with. So I'm going to post this link so that you guys can have more information on it. Compatibility solution for vector draw ables. All right, so we have that. And so and so and so based on, okay, so it wants us to go ahead and um, make sure we have this inside our default config, and that's going to be inside our Gradle build.gradle. So we're going to go to our Android, and then we're going to go to our build.gradle file, and then inside our build.gradle, and wanted us to go to default config. So default config, and they wanted us to add this line, and then we're going to go ahead and sync now. All right, so we added that. And with your project configured properly, you can now move on to adding the icons into the layout. Insert icons and position elements. You'll be using image views to display icons in the app. This is how your final UI will appear. Open the activity main.xml layout. First, position the store icon next to the cost of service text field. Insert a new image view as the first child of the constraint layout before the text input layout. So inside the constraint layout, they want us to add this before the text input layout. So we're going to, so they want this to be the store icon. So we're going to go ahead and copy this and put it above the text input layout inside our application, or I'm sorry, inside our layout file. And this guy is going to go here. So we're going to be using the store icon. And okay. So it says it's not constrained. So let's see if they give us a constraint. It says also set Android important for accessibility equals no, since this image is used for decorative purposes. Okay, so we did that. And it is expected that there will be an error on the image view because the view is not constrained yet. You'll fix that next. Position the icon cost of service in 2 steps. First, add constraints into the image view, and then update constraints on the text input layout next to it. Step 5. The diagram shows how the constraints should be set up. On the image view, you want its starting edge to be constrained to the starting edge of the parent view. App layout constraint start to start of equals parent. The icon appears centered vertically compared to the text field beside it, so constrain the top of this image view to the top of the text field. Constrain the bottom of the image view layout constraint bottom to the bottom of the text field. To refer to the text field, use the resource ID cost of service. The default behavior is that when two constraints are applied to a widget in the same dimension, such as a top and bottom constraint, the constraints are supplied equally. The result is that the icon gets vertically centered in relation to the cost of service field. So basically, these are the constraints that they want us to add to our image view icon of the store, which is by our text input layout. Okay. It says the icon and text field are still overlapping in the design view. That will be fixed in the next step. Let's see if we can see what they are talking about there. Okay. So these two are overlapping. So this guy needs to be shifted over. The starting edge of the text input layout should be constrained to the ending of the image view. To add some spacing between the text views, add a start margin of 16 dp on the text input layout. Okay, so the text input layout, we need a start margin of 16 dp. So inside our code, and they said is the layouts start off. Layout constraint start to end of. So start to so they want us to change, I think, layout constraint. Oh, okay, they want us to add this as well, and this actually goes inside the text input layout. So Okay. After all these changes, the icon should be positioned correctly next to the text field. Alright, let's see if that is correct here. Alright, it is set next to it. But on my system, I might need to do some further adjustments because it's not far enough over, it appears. It says next, insert the service bell icon next to the how was the service text view. Well, you could declare the image view, the image view anywhere within the constraint layout. Your XML layout will be easier to read if you insert the new image view in the XML layout after the text input layout, but before the service question text view. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and call this video a day. So this will be part 1 of going over this code lab. So stay tuned for part 2 of this code lab on the next stream. And thank you guys all for watching, and have a wonderful day, and always